So as I've talked about before, even though the Rode NT1a and the SM7B are frequently compared on the internet a lot, they are fundamentally different microphones. One of them, the Rode NT1a, is a condenser. One of them, the SM7B, is a dynamic. I've explained this in more detail in my video about the NT1 versus the SM7B. So if you want to see an explanation on the actual difference in anatomy between those two microphones, go check that video out. But what it boils down to is your room and the amount of room sensitivity you're going to get from your microphone's response. In an untreated environment, the condenser is going to pick up so much more noise from the room around you, if you can't tell, than the SM7B or a dynamic will. Really important to keep in mind if you're working in a reflective, untreated environment. So if you're working in an untreated environment, I would tend to go for a dynamic, not necessarily the SM7B, but a dynamic. So we mentioned the NT1, this is the NT1a, and although they share a very similar name, they are two very different microphones. This is an exact quote from the NT1 on the Rode website, and it says, although the body of the NT1 closely resembles the NT1a, the microphone has been completely redesigned from the ground up, the only shared component being the mesh grill. See, where the NT1 has a really flat frequency response with only a slight boost in the high end, and it really focuses a lot on the smooth mid-range response, the NT1a has a lot more varied frequency response, specifically targeting the high-end range of the microphone. So that means it's going to emphasize the high-end response of whatever the sound source is. If you have a high register voice, it may sound nice, airy, and it might emphasize the resonant frequencies that are naturally present in your voice. For higher voices, you may find you prefer the NT1 because of the fact that it already boosts the natural frequencies found in your voice. Still, I cannot emphasize enough, with the NT1a, room is going to be an ever-present factor until you can get some nice treatment involved. So as we've established with the SM7B, one of the biggest benefits when it comes to a non-treated environment is the room rejection. This makes it ideal for podcasting and voiceover, and a few other things make it ideal for podcasting and voiceover as well. While the NT1a emphasizes the high-end range of a voice, the SM7B emphasizes the low mid-range quite a lot. This is kind of true of all dynamic microphones, but because the SM7B has this resonance chamber on the back of it, it actually further emphasizes the low end on most voices. So if you want a tone that's really beef and thick and present, you might want to go with the SM7B over the Rode NT1a. Some people do consider that to be just kind of a muddy sound, but to each their own. So let's give you a working example. This is not my SM7B. This is the property of the singer that's coming in later to do the vocal demonstration. She does not like her SM7B because she has a really high registered voice. It doesn't necessarily complement the natural characteristics of her vocal tone. This doesn't make it a bad microphone. It just might be ill-suited for her personal vocal. So again, you need to worry about what vocal environment you're going to be recording in, the room, and also the vocal register that your voice naturally has. Is it lower, if you want a beefy sound, or is it higher? Do you want a more airy sound? Please keep in mind that these are generalities. You need to make your own assertion based off of the tests that we do in these videos on which microphone you prefer, if these things even ring true, and it also depends a lot on how you perceive the microphone on your own specific voice. So let's talk specs and compare the specs of these two microphones, although it doesn't really make sense because this is a dynamic, this is a condenser. The Rode NT1 has a 1-inch gold capsule that's picking up sound. This does not have a capsule at all. This is a magnet and a coil wrapped around that magnet, and that's what produces a signal in a dynamic microphone. The NT1a can hear things from 20 Hertz to 20,000 Hertz, and that is the whole range of human hearing. The SM7B can hear from 50 Hertz to 20,000 Hertz. Slightly less, but that is not necessarily a disadvantage. It's going to cut out some of the mud from the low-end sound of the microphone. The maximum sound pressure level or volume level that you can get on a Rode NT1a is 137 decibels. On the Shure SM7B, it is 150 decibels. This is feasibly an advantage for the SM7B, although this is an advantage on every dynamic microphone. Pretty much every dynamic microphone can reach a higher volume than a condenser. These are more fragile. But if you're working in a live situation, if you want to use this to record a really loud guitar, or if you find yourself using this on drums, this can take a higher volume. And finally, let's talk about a weirdly controversial subject. The SM7B needs a lot of signal to bring it up to optimum volume levels, or about -18 dB to -12 dB. Typically, with most interfaces, you're going to find when you crank that mic pre, you're going to be maxing it out, or you're going to be very close to maxing it out. As a result, depending on the quality of your preamps, you might hear a hiss, and something that people don't think about a lot, you may also hear more sensitivity in your room. This gives the SM7B an unfair reputation of being a noisy microphone. It's not the SM7B being noisy, it's your preamp being noisy because of the amount of signal it needs to give to the microphone. So to remedy this situation, some companies have made different products in order to add more gain before hitting the preamp gain. It's a pre to the preamp. Two common examples are the Fethead and the Cloudlifter. So this Cloudlifter costs $150. So we're essentially saying if we want to buy this already expensive microphone, in order to make it quiet, we need $150 more. So you can go a few different routes with this. You can buy a Cloudlifter or a Fethead. You can take the slightly more noisy signal, and it is slight. And to 90% of the population, it's going to be imperceptible. It's a very slight noise level. Again, depending on your mic pre. Or here's the third option. In another video where I compared the SM7B to the SM57 and the SM58, I actually did a more thorough test of the amount of noise floor you're going to get when this thing is cranked to optimum levels. Go check that out if you want to see a more detailed approach to this subject. But essentially, the SM7B needs 57 to 59 dBs of gain in order to bring it up to that -18 to -12 dB mark. The most common budget interface is the Scarlett 2i2 or the Scarlett Solo. Those have around 54 dBs of gain. So again, 57 to 59 to get this to optimum levels, 54 dBs of gain. So the actual number of preamp gain can be kind of hard to find. I've had a difficult time finding the exact numbers from the manufacturer's websites. I'm going off of other data that I found online. But we have some awesome viewers, and one of them just did a straight up test. You can buy budget interfaces that are not the Scarlett that could power the SM7B, specifically the Mo2 M2 and the Behringer UMC 202 HD. Great name. These microphones are both in the budget range, the Behringer being an extremely budget interface, and the Mo2 M2 being a very affordable interface, relatively speaking. And they can power the SM7B to the proper gain levels without the need of a Cloudlifter. So instead of spending your money on an interface, an extra $150, and an expensive $400 microphone, you can cut out that Cloudlifter from the equation. So there is some legitimacy to talk about the quality of these preamps and whether or not, even though they have the amount of gain to power the SM7B to the proper levels, they maybe are a little bit noisier than some of the other preamps on the market. And this is why I would trust the Mo2 M2 over the Behringer. Regardless, you don't have to spend an extra $150 on the interface you already bought. You can just buy an interface that has the proper gain levels to power an SM7B. But again, if you already have a Scarlett or an interface that you've already purchased, most of them are still going to be able to power the SM7B, just with slightly more noise than optimal. Slightly. As we always do with these microphone comparisons, we're going to do a series of tests. The first being a vocal test on a backing track. The second being that same vocal completely a cappella. And then we're going to do a blind guitar test so you can see for yourself which sounds you prefer in a musical context. Today, again, we have Carolina Alabau, who is going to sing one of her songs for you today. Please go check out her Instagram and YouTube channel, which I'll link to in the description below. And please enjoy.
Cada día vivo un universo lleno de ilusión y luego se esfuma dejándome a oscuras. Vienes por ahí haciendo de mi mente una locura. Me da miedo pensar y así dejarte entrar. Y digo no, no quiero ser la piedra en mi propio camino. Y digo no, quiero callar la voz que me encoge los sentidos. El daño ya está hecho, me rompieron una vez y no encuentro salida a esta gran herida. Tantas veces he intentado que mi mente no se acuerde. La traición cuesta tanto de olvidar que sigo aquí dañada, no dejándome avanzar. Y digo no, no quiero ser la piedra en mi propio camino. Y digo no, quiero callar la voz que me encoge los sentidos. Y digo no, no quiero volver a amar otra vez. Y ya no cuesta tanto respirar.
Folks, thank you so much for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram at @RealAudioHaze. If you want production lessons, please let me know. Email me at this email. I'll also put my qualifications up on the screen as well in case you're interested. Thank you so much, and I will see you in the next video.